By 2016, Ripple was no longer the underdog. It was the crypto startup that had managed to get a seat at the same table as global banks. While Bitcoiners fought about scaling wars and block sizes, Ripple was signing memorandums of understanding with financial giants. Japan's SBI Group became a major investor. Santander, Axis Bank, Standard Chartered, and even American Express were testing RippleNet to replace or augment parts of the outdated SWIFT system. It felt like validation, proof that crypto could work within the system, not just outside of it. At the center of it all was Brad Garlinghouse, a former Yahoo executive with a knack for clear communication and confidence. Garlinghouse joined Ripple as CEO and quickly became its face. His energy was infectious. While Chris Larsen focused on long-term partnerships, Garlinghouse was the bridge between Silicon Valley and Wall Street. Part salesman, part visionary. He could sit in front of a room of bankers and make them believe blockchain wasn't their enemy, it was their future. That confidence was contagious. Ripple was expanding globally, from San Francisco to London, Singapore, Mumbai, and Dubai. By the time Bitcoin had reached mainstream headlines for the first time, Ripple had positioned itself as the enterprise blockchain company. They weren't trying to be a currency. They were trying to be the internet of value. At this stage, XRP had a clear utility: to serve as a bridge asset in cross-border payments. If Bank A in Japan wanted to send yen to Bank B in Mexico, the Ripple system could convert yen into XRP, send it across the network instantly, and then convert it into pesos on the other side. That single transaction, which normally took days and cost up to 10% in fees, could now settle in under 10 seconds at a fraction of a cent. That was revolutionary. In 2017, the broader crypto market went wild. Retail investors flooded in. Bitcoin crossed $20,000 for the first time. Ethereum exploded, and XRP, quietly sitting there as a practical asset, suddenly became one of the biggest stories in crypto. From less than half a cent at the start of the year, it skyrocketed to over $3.80 by January 2018. Ripple's market cap briefly overtook Ethereum, making it the second largest cryptocurrency in the world. It was a surreal moment. Bankers were calling Ripple's offices asking if they could buy Ripple stock. New investors confused XRP, the token, with shares in Ripple Labs, the company. YouTube channels and Twitter influencers were screaming predictions of $10, $50, even $100 XRP. The hashtag XRP army was born. A passionate global movement convinced they were holding the future of finance in their hands. But behind the euphoria, cracks were forming. Some of Ripple's banking partners were testing RippleNet but not using XRP itself. The technology worked without the token if banks preferred to settle in fiat. Ripple was trying to prove utility. Speculators were chasing price. Those two worlds rarely align for long. By early 2018, the bubble burst. Bitcoin fell from $20,000 to under $6,000. Ethereum and XRP crashed along with it. The same media outlets that hailed Ripple as the savior of global payments now called it overhyped. XRP dropped more than 90% from its all-time high. Many assumed the story was over, but Ripple didn't flinch. While thousands of ICOs vanished, Ripple doubled down on real-world adoption. They launched XRapid, later rebranded as On-Demand Liquidity, or ODL, a product that actually used XRP to bridge fiat currencies and cross-border transfers. MoneyGram became one of the first major partners to test it. In pilot programs, ODL reduced liquidity costs by over 60% and processing times by more than 90%. It wasn't just theory anymore. It was working. At the same time, RippleNet kept expanding. By 2019, over 300 financial institutions had joined. Ripple opened corridors between Mexico and the Philippines, Australia and Japan, Brazil, and the UAE. They weren't talking about disrupting banks anymore. They were onboarding them. Ripple was becoming part of the infrastructure of global finance. Then came 2020, a year that changed everything for the world and for Ripple. As the pandemic froze economies, digital payments surged. Central banks began exploring digital currencies. and stablecoins started eating into traditional settlement rails. XRP was positioned perfectly for this shift. But then, out of nowhere, a storm hit that no one saw coming. In December 2020, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filed a lawsuit against Ripple Labs, Chris Larsen, and Brad Garlinghouse. The SEC accused Ripple of selling over $1.3 billion worth of XRP as unregistered securities. To the agency, XRP wasn't a currency. It was an investment contract. The complaint landed like a thunderclap. The timing was brutal. Just days before Christmas, exchanges began delisting XRP. Coinbase, Bitstamp, Bittrex, and others cut trading support. The price plunged 50% overnight. Investors panicked. For the first time, Ripple, once seen as the crypto company most aligned with regulators, was being accused of breaking the very laws it had tried to work within. The community was furious. Some saw it as political, a move by an outgoing administration to score a final point before leaving office. Others thought Ripple had simply pushed too far. Either way, the lawsuit threatened everything. RippleNet partners paused integrations. Investors dumped tokens. The XRP army rallied online, shouting, "Free XRP," and vowing to hold no matter what. Garlinghouse, however, refused to retreat. In public interviews, he accused the SEC of picking winners and losers by targeting Ripple while giving Ethereum a free pass. If XRP is a security, he said, then every other token in crypto is too. The lawsuit became a proxy war for the entire industry. Its outcome would decide whether digital assets were commodities like gold or securities like stocks. Inside Ripple, the team went into lockdown. Developers kept building. Lawyers worked around the clock. For nearly 3 years, the case crawled through the U.S. court system. Every filing, every motion, every leaked document became breaking news in the crypto world. The lawsuit was no longer just about Ripple. It was about clarity for everyone. And while the legal fight dragged on, the market evolved. Bitcoin ETFs entered mainstream discussion. Ethereum matured into a global smart contract platform. Stablecoins dominated cross-border flows. Ripple, unable to promote XRP directly in the US, focused overseas, in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. There, the lawsuit didn't matter. Banks still used Ripple's technology, and regulators were clearer about classifying XRP as a payment token, not a security. In 2021 and 2022, Ripple quietly built a second life outside the headlines. They invested in CBDC pilots with smaller nations. They launched developer grants to expand the XRP ledger ecosystem. NFTs were added to the ledger. Transaction volume grew even as US media called Ripple a cautionary tale. But then, in July 2023, came the moment of redemption, at least partially. Judge Analisa Torres ruled that XRP sales on public exchanges did not constitute securities transactions because there was no contract between Ripple and buyers. However, institutional sales directly to investors could still qualify. The decision sent shockwaves through the market. Within hours, XRP spiked nearly 70%. It was reinstated on Coinbase. The XRP army declared victory. For Ripple, it was vindication. Not total, but powerful. Garlinghouse called it a win not just for Ripple, but for crypto clarity. The company had survived the toughest test imaginable, and in the process, it had become a symbol of endurance, of defiance, and of how blurry the line between innovation and regulation still is. But the fight wasn't over. The SEC hinted at appealing parts of the decision. Ripple continued to operate under partial uncertainty. Yet, the ruling had already reshaped how regulators around the world viewed crypto assets. It wasn't just about Ripple anymore. It was about whether blockchain innovation could coexist with old laws written decades before Bitcoin existed.